So members, thank you so much for joining us today. We are very grateful that you have taken enough time to be with us. Before we start, I'm going to request one of the members to bless us with a prayer. Any volunteer?
Let's pray, members.
Thank you so much, Ruth.
Dear Lord, we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for today, and we thank you for this opportunity to meet together, share, learn, and deliberate. We invite you in our midst. Bless all our activities, our deliberations, and enable us to learn and also use the knowledge to implement. We ask all this, trusting and believing in the name of the Almighty God. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Professor Ruth. Members, when I'm going to display the program, we shall start with a little bit of the introduction about the webinar, and then we shall have opening remarks from the chair, Executive Chair CUUL. Then we shall have our long-awaited presentation from our facilitator, Dr. Mary Namuguzi. Then thereafter, we shall have a Q&A. We shall give the participants chance to ask questions. But however, as she goes through her presentation, when you have a question, you can always put it in the Q&A. We shall read it when the time comes so that you don't get to forget it. And then thereafter, we shall have the closing remarks, which will come last by the chair of the Research and Publication Committee. Now, members, my name is Sarah Nakaziba, and I work with Aga Khan University, but also I'm also the chairperson for the Research and Publication Committee for CUUL. But today I'm here in two capacities. I'm here as the moderator and at the same time the chair for the functional committee. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm seeing our students from the different campuses, from the different universities. You're welcome. Some of our lecturers, faculty, you're also welcome. The librarians, you're welcome. I'm seeing also some members from the executive committee of CUUL, also some chairpersons for the functional committee. So all welcome. And before we start, I'd like to thank the publicity team, which is being headed by Martha Liaka, for aggressively marketing this webinar. Thank you so much. As you can see, the numbers are increasing, and this is because of their publicity. Our committee is very grateful for the work that you have done. The committee has a number of members. I'm not alone. We are 5 in total. Myself as the chair, we have Dr. Agnes Namaganda from Makerere University, one of the members. We have Mr. Boniface Angugi from Muni University. He's our secretary. Then we have Dr. Ongaya Kizito from Makerere University. He's also a member. And then we have Ms. Barbara Alago from Uganda Management Institute, also a member. So those are the committee members. Myself and the committee members, we were tasked by the committee, by the CUUL. CUUL, for those who do not know, CUUL is the Consortium of Uganda University Library. So we were tasked to find ways of how we can enhance scholarship in our member institutions, how we can build the capacities of the librarians and their patrons in regards to publishing and research. So my committee, together with my committee, we have come up with one of the initiatives, which is the webinar, CUUL webinar series, which will be happening every end of the month. So every end of the month, be ready, we shall be having a webinar from the Research and Publication Committee. So, but this is the inaugural webinar. That's why you see that we have a program, and that is why you see that we are also happy to host the chairperson from CUUL, who is Mr. Andrew Ojuong. He's also one of us, and he's here today. So every end of the month, we shall be having a webinar. But the first webinar, we decided that it should be on writing, academic writing. Yes, we all know how to write. We've written letters, emails, etc. But when it comes to academia, there is that kind of writing style that we have to adhere to. And we're like, yes, our members need to get the skills and the knowledge of how to write academically. So that is why you see that we are hosting this webinar today. And in this webinar, we are privileged to host, to have a facilitator from Aga Khan University. She's not a librarian, but we all know that when it comes to research, research is research, irrespective of which discipline that you're coming from. So she's called Dr. Mary Namuguzi, and she's a nurse by profession. She then is going to facilitate today's section. A little bit about herself. Namuguzi has a PhD, she has a master's and a bachelor's degree in nursing. She also has a postgraduate diploma in medical education. Her research interests span around non-communicable diseases, pediatrics, mental health, and mixed method studies, systematic reviews. She has supervised students at level of master's, bachelor's degree, and diploma. And in her leadership role, she is a faculty member at Aga Khan University, and she oversees the skills lab at the university. Mary Namuguzi has mentored a number of faculty, the new one especially who have just joined Aga Khan University. She has been a mentor to a number of them. She has also mentored students over the past 10 years. And her philosophy is to see people grow in their different roles as leaders and day-to-day work. Therefore, she strives to ensure that she creates a conducive environment for mentorship. Namuguzi, Dr. Namuguzi Mary, you are welcome to this session. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah, and good morning, everyone. I hope you can be able to hear me well. Dr. Sarah, are you able to hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So, like Sarah has told you, my name is Mary and I work with Aga Khan University. And I am also interested in research. And also, like she has said, I don't have a background like the majority of you do, but at least I have interacted with the librarians in our place and we've worked together and we have had some publications together. So research is research, like she has said, and academic writing remains standard. So that is why I am able to take you through this morning, and I hope you will be able to learn something new from our presentation today. So allow me to share my slide, but she advised that I can switch off the video after we start.
Mr. Andrew Ojlong, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I would like also to attach the video to the voice, and that's me. Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. It's with great pleasure and honor that today we launch the inaugural lecture or webinar titled Introduction to Academic Writing and Writing Tools. And I would like to express sincere gratitude to Dr. Sarah Nakaziba, Chairperson of the Research and Publications Factional Committee, for extending this gracious invitation to me. The dedication and commitment of the Research and Publications Committee in organizing this event is creative and highly commendable. As we embark on this journey of knowledge sharing and collaboration, I'm reminded of the profound impact of academic writing, especially on the advancement of research and scholarship. Because in today's rapidly evolving academic landscape, where new global information doubles every couple of months, the ability to effectively develop and communicate research findings is more crucial than ever before for an intellectual community like the Consortium of Uganda University Libraries that supports the research and innovation ecosystem in the country. So the CUUL research and publications webinars provide a platform for us to come together, learn from experts in the field, and exchange ideas on best practices, research, and scholarly discourse. So our collective expertise and experiences has the potential to transform practice by offering valuable insights and will enhance our academic endeavors. So I'm particularly excited about the prospect of this being the first webinar in a series of many planned events by CUUL. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speaker of the day, Dr. Mary Namuguzi, solidarity, and your dedication to advancing scholarship and research excellence in Uganda. So without further ado, I am certain that together we will make this webinar a resounding success. Thank you once again for your presence, and I wish you all an enriching and productive session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Andrew Ojbong. Mr. Andrew Ojbong, like I introduced earlier on, he's the executive chair for CUUL. Now we can go back to the presentation. Dr. Mary, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah, and the executive chair, plus the members present in this webinar. I am very, very privileged to be a facilitator in this webinar. And I believe, like I had earlier on said, that you will be able to learn something, hopefully, through this presentation. So our presentation outline will be able to define what academic writing is. We shall look at the structure of an academic document. We shall also look at the language and style that is expected of us while we write in an academic manner, synthesize and integrate sources of material, and then paraphrasing, quoting, and summarizing. We shall explain the importance of academic integrity, and then we shall also look at how we can do editing and proofreading after we have written our documents. Dr. Sarah, are you able to hear me over there?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. I can also see your presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So when we talk about academic writing, we are really referring to the formal style of writing that research and educators use in scholarly publications. So when we talk about academic writing, we are not just referring to writing as and how, but we follow a formal order depending on what you're writing, depending on maybe the assignment. If, for example, you're a student, if you're a publisher, which type of writing style are you expected of? So you're supposed to follow a formal style. Now, formal style will require that you know the size of academic document you're going to produce. Sometimes you may be given page numbers, sometimes number of words. So it is very, very important that we keep into those limits. And also sometimes it is required that you write in a certain writing style. You use a certain referencing style. So that is very key. And that is why we talk about it to be formal. And then also academic writing or scholarly writing helps scholars to present their ideas. So what ideas are you trying to present to the audience? And do you know the audience you're writing to, for instance? Because there are different forms of audiences. Sometimes it could be a general audience. Now, general audiences are people who are interested in reading every material they come across. But in most cases, those are people who are very good readers, and they normally synthesize what is in that document that you have written. So when you write to the general audience, you are ideally supposed to be really, really precise. Your points should be clear, and the writing style should be also clear. And if you're writing to a specialized audience, it is very important to also note that this could be your teachers or lecturers, and they are specialists in your area that you're writing about. So they'll be very, very particular about the content area, and they'll also be particular about what is new in the area. So you are supposed to be very critical. So that is very important when we are writing, to keep note of the audience we are trying to look at. And then it also helps researchers or writers to analyze the research findings to construct an effective argument. So that is very, very important, that as we write, we also need to have a plan on how we are going to analyze, on how we are going to construct our arguments. So we do not write subjectively, but we are supposed to be very objective. We should be able to look at what is there in the literature and also what we have to conclude. You do not only read from literature and then you copy and paste it as is. It will not make sense if you do not relate it to your area of focus or your objective. So that is why it is very, very important that we write in an academic format. We also need to look at the characteristics of an academic writing if we are to be good writers. So when we begin thinking about writing, we need to have a planned and focused approach to writing. So you should be able to answer the questions that you have set to have answers to. So for example, when you begin to write, you must know the aim of your write-up, you must have objectives, and as you write, you should be able to answer or achieve those objectives that you have targeted to achieve. And then it should be able to demonstrate your understanding of the subject and how this relates to the question. So, like I said earlier, that as you write, when you pick something, for example, from literature, you should also be able to synthesize and know, how do I relate it to, or how do I understand it myself? How does it relate to my work? How do I conclude about this? So we do not only pick from the literature. So when we pick something from the literature, we should also be able to make sense out of it and make our own conclusions, that this is from literature, yes, but this is how it relates to my findings. This is how it relates to my research gap. And then we also look at it to be structured. So a well-written academic paper must be written in a well-ordered and coherent way. So it has a format. And sometimes some lecturers will give you a rubric if you're a student, for instance, that this is what I expect as you write this paper or this scholarly paper or this research proposal. They will give you a rubric. And then if they give you a rubric, you should order it in that manner. So even your headings should be ordered in that kind of manner. The objectives that you're going to develop will be in relation to what you have been instructed to do. So that is the kind of ordered manner. And of course, when we talk of being coherent, there should be some bit of flow. It shouldn't be like you're coming from the introduction, then you're talking about the conclusions. There should be a very good flow. And that is why we talk about the order and logical manner in the flow of the ideas as you develop your academic paper. And then it should bring together related points or materials. Now, when we talk about this, we shall later talk about how can we bring together related materials. What are some of the words, like the transitional words, that can help us to bring together things that are related, things that contradict, okay? And things that we want to emphasize as we write, so that even when the reader is going through your write-up, piques interest. It is interesting. I don't know whether some of you have ever read an academic document that is really flat. You read from the beginning to the end, and there is nothing interesting. There is nothing that has been emphasized. There are no transitional relationships as you read through this work. So that is what is very important as we look at the structure of the writing. And then, of course, it should be evidence-based. So someone who is writing about something should develop very good knowledge of that subject area, such that even when someone asks you about your topic, you should be able to talk about it. You should be able to talk about the latest literature that exists out there about your subject area, especially when it comes to research. And then opinions and arguments should, of course, be supported with evidence. And if possible, they should have very good synthesis of literature where you do not have only one citation for one thing, because it really speaks a lot when you are reading someone's work and then you see at least one maybe paragraph or one sentence has been cited or has been cited by more than one authors. Okay, when I talk of authors, I mean like different articles have talked about the same or have had different findings about the same. So that means that someone took the time to read several sources of literature and they synthesized their findings or literature. That is very, very key. So evidencing whatever we pick from literature is very, very important. And of course, when we make citations, we should be able to reference them accurately so that we do not have wrong literature in text, and then it is referenced like very good reference, but the citation is not matching. Or someone has written so many citations and then the reference list is lacking. Or someone has produced a reference list without in-text citations. So that is very key. Whatever appears on the reference list should be reflected in the in-text citations. Then, of course, the write-up should be free of errors as we write. We should make sure we minimize on the grammatical errors, such as the spelling, the punctuations, the verbs that we use. We should be able to minimize that, and we'll be looking at how we can actually try to minimize all that as we move forward in this presentation. So it is also important that for the sake of maybe students who are present on this forum, to be able to know the types of academic documents that they might be talking about or writing about. So sometimes it could be that you're writing chapters in your research. It could be that you're writing an essay. It could be that it is a research article for publication. It could be a technical report, thesis, literacy analysis, and annotated bibliographies. So all these will have different formats. All these will have different flows. So it is important that we look at the guide. How do I write a chapter? Yes, a chapter should begin with an introduction. It should have different headings that speak to the objective that you want to achieve. Then it should have a conclusion or a summary of that chapter. And then it should tell us the steps going forward. What do we expect next? And then, of course, essays, they normally give you number of words, which is normally about 1,500 to 2,000. Then technical research, research articles, these now depend on the different journals. They will give you different writing styles, how big it should be, and so on. Then the technical reports, these are normally after maybe you have been given a grant, you need to account for it, you produce reports which can also be published. You produce reports at different stages so that you are able to account for the money that you are given in that grant. And of course, the thesis, most of us have gone through it. We know that it has different stages, and we should be able to write appropriately. And then literacy analysis. Sometimes we are critiquing articles of articles that are already in existence. We want to critique them. We want to find out the gaps. We want to find out the strength. So there are different guidelines on how we do that. And if, for example, you're supposed to do it, you're supposed to follow the guide of how do I critique an article in order to analyze it very well, to identify anything that could be missing or the positives about it, and then you make recommendations. And then there are sometimes bibliographies. Yes, and sometimes it could be that we want to look at bibliographic analysis. So look at different articles and analyze them. Which methods did they use? Where were the researchers coming from? What are their backgrounds? All those are to do with those kinds of analysis. Then looking at the structure of an academic paper. Now, many times when we are given an activity or an assignment, or to begin a research proposal, or to begin writing a manuscript, the first thing that comes to your mind is, where do I start from? Okay, where do I start from is the question that comes to your mind. So it is very, very important that when you begin to think about where to start from, look at the guide that has been given to you and develop a structure. Develop objectives out of what has been given to you as a guide to this write-up or as a rubric to this write-up. For example, when Dr. Sarah contacted me to have a presentation about academic writing, I just developed a structure on how I will go about this. So I said, if it is academic writing, she has given me some guidance on what participants expect. So I just developed blank slides with different subheadings, and then I started developing the content. So that is basically the structure that you're supposed to develop after you've been given a rubric. So for instance, if you are asked to write a research article, you need to go to the publication guidelines, look at what is expected. There are some people who will tell you, have subheadings in the abstract. And then there are other journals that will tell you, write one blocked paragraph, and it should be 50 words. Others will give you 300 words. So if you already know the different things that you need to include in an abstract, have that structure, then punch in whatever you want to punch in after you've developed the structure. And then other things you begin to develop as you move along. However, when we are developing any sort of write-up, is it a chapter? Is it an article? Is it an essay? We need to know that it is very, very important to think about, maybe if you had a stool. If you had a stool, it has different parts. The first part that we think about in academic writing is the introduction. Introduction is very key, and it gives an overview of what is expected in this whole write-up. So it should be succinct to ensure that it has the gist of the matter that the reader expects from this. And of course, this introduction will also reflect what is in your title. And then after you have written your introduction, it is important to think about the thesis statement or your problem statement or the aim of your study. It is very, very important that it should be clear as we write. Even in the abstract, that should come out very clearly. And then, of course, the body is also key. Now the body entails all the content that you're going to be writing about. It will have different subheadings. It will have different chapters. If, for example, you're writing a research report, and then it should also have a conclusion. So you realize that even when you're writing a chapter, it will give us an introduction briefly. It will also give us in the introduction, you may have also the aim of writing that chapter. Then you will have the main body or text of that chapter. Then you have to conclude that chapter. Just like even when you're writing a whole thesis, it also has these different parts that we look at. So looking at this tool, you realize that this tool will be incomplete without these the stands. It may be incomplete without this middle part, which sometimes are referred to as the intestines. A human being cannot exist without intestines, just like this tool may not be existing without this curve inwards to support it. Otherwise, if it was going to be very straight, it may not be as good as it would have been in this shape. And then, after looking at the structure of an academic paper, this is now a summary of what it should entail. In your introduction, like I have already said, identify the topic and purpose of your write-up, then orient the reader, give some bit of detail about your topic. And then the thesis statement or the aim also comes under introduction. And then when it comes to the body of your work, you may have several paragraphs, several subheadings, and then provide detailed information about each of those subheadings, include examples, statistics, graphs, tables, charts to support all those ideas, and then analyze the evidence, and of course, include in text citations as you go along in your write-up. And in the conclusions, normally a conclusion is very, very important because there are some people like me, sometimes I choose to read the conclusion before I read the body to see, after I have read the abstract, I go to the conclusion to see if what I want is actually in this article. So it is very important to remember that the conclusion paragraph should not have anything new, but it should restate your thesis statement. It should summarize what you have written. And of course, in the summary, you're supposed to write key things that you would want every reader to know about your work, such that if someone does not have the time to read each and everything, they go to your conclusion, look at it. Does it have what I want? Yes. Then I pick interest in reading everything that I have to read. And then, of course, it will include recommendations, and recommendations could be in different areas. It could be that you're recommending for further research. It could be that you're recommending for leaders, policymakers. It could be that you're recommending to educators and so many others. So that is why it is important that we recommend. Sometimes people pick research studies from recommendations of previous studies. So that is why it becomes very important to pick out key recommendations, especially dealing with identified gaps in literature. Yes, like I had already talked about, as we write, it is important to have a very good flow of the data that we are writing about, or the information that we are writing about. So when we talk about that kind of flow, it is also good to think about the transition words that we need to use. For instance, if we want to emphasize something, there are certain words that we need to borrow in English, like you will read research articles where when you're sure of something, you can use words like, of course, they may not be very conclusive, because we do not want to be very conclusive in research, because what you find in your research study may be slightly different from what someone else has found, or if there was a replication of your research, then someone else may find slightly different findings from yours. So that is why when we are using these emphasis transitional words, we need to use them with a lot of caution. But there are words like undoubtedly, and then unquestionably, obviously. So as you write, or as you read people's papers, you will find them using these kinds of words: importantly, absolutely, definitely. So you want to emphasize a particular point. Now, these ones, they are normally commonly used if you're writing your results, findings, or your discussion chapter, but you may not use them so much when it comes to your literature review section. And then if, for example, you are writing and you still want to write several ideas that relate to the previous paragraph, but you want to split your paragraphs, you can use words that are talking about things like along with, apart from this, moreover. So those show the reader that you are actually still talking about the same thing like the previous paragraph, but you're transiting from one point to another, from one paragraph to another. Okay? Besides using computer science, the university has also put in place this and this and this. So you realize that the moment you say besides, it means you have already written about something similar to what you want to write about again. In addition, some people use additionally, not only. So those are words that we can borrow as we write. Then if we are talking about contrasting information or contradictory information, for instance, if your findings have found A, but literature has found B, so you will state your finding and you say that, and then you can say, this is what I have found in my research. Nonetheless, previous literature discovered this and this and this, or revealed this. So these are to help us write contradicting information. So some people will use despite, in contrast.
I'm going to get it shortly. The last time I sent you already for, but it was a different location.
Dr. Sarah, you can help us with that. Okay. So some people will use conversely to mean in contrarily or contrarily to. And then if you're writing about some things that are in order or in a sequence or over time, then we use words like following, at this time, previously. So you can see they are talking about time series. Finally, subsequently, before, above all. So you're referring to things that have happened over time. We use such transitional words to transit from one idea to another. I hope this makes sense to all of us. And still, when we are talking about writing, it is important to think about some tools that have been developed in literature. Now, for example, if we are writing different chapters of our work, it is important that we look at phrase bank. Now, there are different types of phrasing manager or paraphrasing, these phrase banks are different depending on the developers, but I have used Manchester Phrase Bank. I hope some of you have seen it. Maybe I can share with you so that some people who have never used it can also have a feel on how it works. So let me just retrieve it, and then we can have a look at it and how it works for the interest of those who may have never used it. So allow me to stop sharing this, and I'll share the next for demonstration purposes. I hope you're able to see. Dr. Sarah, are you seeing the phrase bank?
Yes, yes, we can see the page. Thank you.
Okay, so as we write, it is also important to know that we are not supposed to struggle so much, because there are good people out there who have developed certain tools to help us write better. So like Manchester Academic Phrase Bank. Now, how do we use it? It depends on what you're writing about. So for example, if there are different things, like if you want to be conscious about what you're writing about, if you want to be critical, classifying and listing ideas, comparing and contrasting, defining terms, and then describing trends, there are different approaches that you can use to help you begin writing or phrasing your sentences, phrasing your paragraphs. So let me look at, for example, defining terms. If I want to look at how to define terms, okay? Now, I will click on it, and after clicking on it, if, for example, I want to begin an introductory phrase using a definition, how do I go about it? Then if I want to look at general meanings or application of meanings, do I want to maybe varying definitions? How do I introduce these varying definitions? So let's look at the introductory paragraphs, how they can appear depending on different write-ups that we want. These are examples. So for example, one will say the term X, what you want to define, was first used by, then you bring in the author, and then you can tell us how they defined it. And then another person could introduce it differently. The term X can be traced back to the work of so and so, Nakaziba Sarah, 2021. And then previous studies mostly defined X as, so you realize that if, for example, you have different definitions that you want to bring in, you don't have to begin with the same kind of beginning sentence. You can actually borrow a leaf from Phrase Bank to help you write better, so that you have varying and interesting write-ups. And then these are just examples. For example, someone will say a university is an institution where knowledge is produced. Another person will say a university is socioeconomics may be defined as the branch of economics, which is, another person will write differently. So that is one way. So if we want to bring in general meanings about a definition, you can go and look at this. So you can see that they have defined it differently. Like this one said, X can broadly be defined as, so you can see it will bring in different definitions, but someone has maybe read from different authors and has tried to bring the ideas together, and then he will be able to cite all those authors. Then another person will write it the same thing. He can say that X can loosely can be loosely described as, then another person can say, whereas X refers to the operation of this and this, Y refers to this and this. So now this one is bringing in also how they differ from different sources of literature, because we have seen different definitions from different sources appearing differently. So you can also borrow this and their examples. Then if you're referring to people's definitions, you can also look at it. And then if you want to comment on a definition, there are some people who have written a whole chapter about a definition of something because they have reviewed different sources of a particular definition, and now they are writing about it. So you can see that different people will still write about it differently, like this definition includes, this definition allows, highlights, this definition helps to distinguish, and so on. So that is how phrase bank works. And then if we go to, maybe if we are writing about, maybe if we are referencing people's definitions, you can also see how they are. Like X is defined by Smith 2003 as, another person will present it differently. So it is important to refer to this phrase bank because it will be helpful. Now, this is to do with definitions. You may choose to go to describing methods. So for example, if you're writing your methods chapter and you're stranded on how to start on something, you can go to describing methods. So under describing methods, you'll see describing previously used research methods. So for example, if you want to bring in the different methods that have been used differently, how do you start it? These are different examples and several of them. Then if you want to indicate the use of an established method, these are examples of how you can bring it in, and it helps you to write better. Even when someone is reading your work, it will really be interesting because it will not be very simplistic, but it will have some bit of complexity when you are writing. It will give us a very good flow on how you present your ideas. Then if you're describing a process, these are examples of how you describe a process. I'll not go into that detail. Then it also gives you phrases on how to report results. How to report results. This is very key. When you're reporting positive and negative reactions, if you're doing a qualitative study, how do you write it? If you're presenting survey and interview findings, how do you do it? So they have given you different examples. Let's make use of this if we haven't been doing so. Even when we are writing manuscripts, it is very, very helpful. Then when you're discussing findings, it is also there. Then writing conclusions, they are very good beginning phrases for us as we write concluding remarks, like restating the aim of the study, and then how do you restate it? Summarizing the main research findings, how do you do that? So all those examples are there. Let's make use of them. So that is academic phrase bank. That is just one of them, but there are quite a number that do exist if you are interested in using the phrase bank. Allow me to go back to the presentation. Dr. Sarah, did you say that we shall have questions at the end, or I can pause a bit and then people ask if they have any questions?
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary. Move the view that you pause a bit because I have a question in the Q&A.
Yes.
It would be very good if you address it now.
Yes.
Someone is asking on the structure of academic document you have shared.
Yes.
Where does the
Yes.
abstract belong? They want to know where the abstract belong on that structure that you shared.
Now, the abstract is normally the beginning of every, not every document, but if you're writing, for example, a research article, the abstract normally comes first, then you can have your introduction and so on. However, like I said, even the abstract is a whole section of its own. So it also has those particular parts. It has the introduction, which introductory paragraph or sentence normally contains the aim of the study. And then it also talks about the methodology that has been used, maybe the participant, the number of participants that have been included, the methodology that was used. So that represents the body or the body text that you want to include, that you want every person to know, because that is very important. There are some people who are just looking out for maybe which method was used. I'm interested in mixed methods or quantitative or CUUL, or I'm interested in a sequential mixed method study. Is it there in the abstract? If it is not there, I'll go to something else. So if you present your abstract, it should have that kind of body, which body also has how you analyzed your data briefly and then your key findings. But it also depends, the size of what you write depends on the number of words that have been prescribed in the write-up. And of course, there is a recommendation, the conclusion of your abstract. So you also realize that an abstract is an independent section of your write-up, and it also has that kind of structure, that it has an introduction, the body, and conclusion. Which conclusion, sometimes people you find they have also included the implication of the study or recommendation in addition to the conclusion. I hope I have answered that question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Namuguzi. The next question is from Caroline. She's asking, what is the term used for the particular search to get that definition? Kindly re-echo for me. That is her question.
Kindly repeat that question.
She's saying, what was the term? I think you mentioned that term, which can be used if someone is searching for a particular definition. So she wants a recap on that. Or Carol,
I think I'm talking.
Sorry?
Okay, maybe she can rephrase that question.
Caroline, would you like to unmute and ask this question, or you can rephrase it and put it in the Q&A? Okay.
But maybe from what I'm understanding, maybe we can wait for her question, but if she really meant what I've been talking about in terms of definitions, I've been talking about the phrase bank. The phrase bank, it helps you on how to phrase your beginning sentences of a paragraph, of an introduction, of a definition, and so on. So that is about phrase bank. But if the question is different, I'll be happy to respond.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
We have another question from Joy. She's saying, she's asking, can the Manchester Phrase Bank work for essay writing? Can the discussion be inclusive of all write-ups?
Yes, Manchester Phrase Bank can be used in any academic paper. And it also has guiding phrases for the discussion chapter. And of course, when we are writing, especially the literature review chapter and then the discussion chapter, in most cases, we have to discuss the literature review that we find and then we have to also put in our input. What do we conclude? what do we synthesize out of this literature in relation to our topic, in relation to our objective? I hope that is what she means. And when it comes to the discussion chapter, it is important that we include the 3 parts when we are writing every point that we consider in our discussion. For example, if you want to discuss a certain finding in your discussion chapter, you first of all have to bring in your finding, and then you bring in what previous literature has talked about. Okay? Is it similar? Is it contradictory? Is it relating to the previous or not? And then you discuss the implication of that in relation to your current findings. You do not just relate it. You need to tell us how it relates with your current findings.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Namuguzi. I hope, Joyce, that answers your question. We can have the last question and then you move on. Someone is saying, please comment on making a standpoint in essay writing.
Okay, I think that is what I've just said even when I was discussing, when I was explaining the previous, that when you are writing, maybe your finding, when you're presenting your findings in the discussion chapter, for example, you are supposed to present it. And then after you have presented it, this study has found that this and this and this. Previous literature established similar findings or contradictory findings where this and this is reported. Then the third thing that you need to come up with is, what does this imply to your current findings? That is very key. So you do not leave it hanging. So that is why it is important to have those 3 parts. Begin by telling us what your current finding is, what exists in literature that is similar or contradictory with your work, and then what does it imply with the current, with your current finding? What could have caused the similarity, or what could have caused the difference? You need to explain to that to the reader, and that is what discussion is all about. And then also when it comes to the literature review chapter, it is the same. You're going to tell us what is in the literature out there. And then after you've told us what is in the literature, how do you make an interpretation of this current existing literature in relation to how it is going to inform your current study? So you do not only have literature presented as if it is a story, you should bring in your voice. So for example, when you find that literature has said A, B, C, D, however, A is going to inform my study based on this and this and this. So you do not just present your literature review and do not relate it to your objective or your aim of the study. Does that answer her question, Dr. Sarah?
Yes, Mary, you have been very elaborate. Thank you so much. But however, before you continue, we have one more question in the chat. Someone is wondering whether they have to paraphrase the sentences that they pick from a Manchester Press Bank or any other press bank. Do they have to paraphrase them?
Thank you very much. Now, this is very special that we do not paraphrase them, because they are there for us to use as they are, depending on what you're writing about. So that is something that is special, that we do not paraphrase them. You can pick it and use it as is, and it will not be picked when you're checking for plagiarism. Did you hear that, Dr. Sarah?
Yes, thank you. You may proceed with the presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. So let's now talk about language and style. Now, language and style, it is very, very important for us when we are writing an academic paper of any sort to ensure that when we write in our language, we are very concise and straight to the point. And then we avoid we use third person. We avoid things like I or we. We avoid personalizing the write-up. Avoid saying, I found this and this in the literature, okay? But you can say, previous literature reports this and this and this, or you can say, Nakaziba et al. 2017 reported this and this. So we avoid personalizing when we are writing research findings. We are writing anything in research. However, it is very applicable when we are looking at qualitative findings. It is okay for us to use that kind of approach. And then, of course, sections in your work must keep it organized. Like I told you, in most cases, you will have a guide. If I'm writing a manuscript, what do I need to follow based on the guidelines of that journal? So you will stick to that. If I'm writing a research report, maybe a PhD thesis, a master's dissertation, how do I present it? It will have different sections which keep it organized and in a very good flow. And of course, if you find a senior person or a senior lecturer, he will even scan through and see, does this student have all the sections I expect to see? And then they will see that they are there. Oh, now let me dive into that and look at how she has presented the different sections. And then it should be unbiased. The language we are using should be unbiased. And when we talk about unbiased, of course, it should be evidence-based from literature. We have the citations. After we have picked information from literature, we should be able to cite it and then reference it. And then, of course, it should be formal. When we talk about it being formal, it should follow a certain structure, not being too fancy, like you put in all types of diagrams, abbreviations, acronyms, even before defining them. That is not acceptable even when we are writing and when we are presenting our research work. So there are certain tools that also help us to do that. So when we begin to write, like we've said about language and style, you need to set up your computer such that it is in the language that you are required to use according to the guidelines. Now, there are some, like depending on the university you're studying from, like in Uganda, most universities will use British English, but some universities use American English. So you're supposed to go to your computer and first of all set the language. And when you're writing, different words are spelled differently in those two different languages. For example, if I can give you an example of the word behavior, in the British English, in the word behavior, they add you, and then in the British English, they remove that you, and it does not have. So when you are using also grammary, it will show you that the English you're using uses this and not that you have typed, so you're able to correct it accordingly. So that is just a setting in the computer that you need to think about when you begin to write. And then you also need to identify the style that is required. Are you using APA? Are you using Vancouver? Are you using, and different universities also will provide their guide. Sometimes you find that, like in the university where I studied my PhD, they used they modified APA and called it APA Harvard. So if a student is there, she's supposed to go to their writing guidelines and modify accordingly, so that you don't stick to APA 7 alone, but you add in the concepts of Harvard. And then some documents will give you a guide that you're supposed to use Vancouver. So make sure that you're writing in the style that is required. Now, why are we talking about a style? Now, this style, why you need to know about it is because their font style will be different for different kinds of styles. Their font size will be different. Then their spacing, line spacing will be different. Then they will also have their, some people, it's like some of these styles will tell you you have to remove you use double spacing, remove extra spaces. So if you have those extra spaces, it will have an implication of whether your paper will be published without that comment or not. And then some of those, why we look at them is also because how they write their headings is different from one to another. So that is why it is key that we look at the style. You don't just write because they have given you an assignment and you have completed it. You need to look at the style. Which one are they using? So even as maybe as lecturers, as teachers, in our rubric, we should be very clear and specify to our students what we need them to use so that you get a uniform kind of presentation of how they write. Because if we do not guide our students, they'll write anyhow and they will think it doesn't matter even when it comes to publication. Okay. And then when it comes to synthesizing and integrating resource material or source materials, information is normally obtained from different sources, so it is very important for us to have a literature review matrix to help us to synthesize the material that we get from literature or from different sources of data. So I've given you an example, but I will also show you what this means. So for example, this literature review matrix can be modified according to what you want to find from the literature. So for example, after you have searched for the literature, you have maybe screened your articles and you maybe have 65 articles that you want to include in your literature review section. So what you need to do is you're going to read the full text of that whole document, and then you'll be picking out, you will say maybe article number 1, which is the serial number, then what is the title of that document, who are the authors of that document, and of course when we put authors, we'd also add the year of publication, when was it published, and then in which country was the study conducted, because sometimes you're looking at maybe low and middle income countries and you're interested in those countries only. So we want to know where was this study conducted and then which methodology was used in that study. Because looking at the methodology in literature is very, very important because it can give us an idea of how generalizable your findings are. Because if you talk about the methodology, you give us even the sample size, it is very important for someone who is reading and is trying to understand how reproducible your study is, how authentic these studies are. We need this information. And then you have key findings that relate to maybe your scoping review question, your systematic review question, your research objectives. So you have a summary of those research findings. So that is now before you begin to write even your literature review chapter or your introduction, because this is your matrix and you can keep referring to it as you write. So after you have finished, because this now comes in after you have finished writing your objectives, you have searched for the literature. Now you're trying to summarize your literature on your literature review matrix. So why am I talking about the literature review matrix? It is very, very helpful when it comes to synthesizing and integrating different sources of material. So allow me to take you to an example of what I am talking about. So this is, Dr. Sarah, are you seeing my projection?
We can see our document.
Yes.
That's what you're projecting. All right.
Yes. I'm trying to show the participants how important a literature review matrix can be. So this is an example of a literature review matrix. Now, this one is a previous literature review matrix that I used, but you can customize and include anything that is in relation to your study, like I said earlier. Some people will say they want to include the methodology, they want to include the country of origin, they want to include the number of participants that were included in that study, and then the methodology, and so on. So this is just an example of a basic literature review matrix that if, for example, you have any study, it becomes and makes your life very easy for you to write your literature review if you have this in place. So for example, article number 1 that I had, this was its title. This was the author and the year of publication. And now, maybe just to give you a guide on why this is like this, I was looking at prevalence of hypertension in low and middle income countries. So I looked at prevalence from different articles that are included in my work. So you can see that according to the first article, the finding is giving me a prevalence of 47. Now, this was conducted in Malaysia. And then I also have in Nigeria, it was 22.9. In Bangladesh, it gave me this. And then in Ethiopia, it was different. And in different years, like you can see, for different titles. Now, already, the moment I get this, when I'm writing my literature review chapter, for example, and I'm talking about prevalence of hypertension in low and middle income countries, I can look at all these prevalences and I give a range. I can give a range that the prevalence of hypertension in low and middle income countries in maybe 10 reported studies ranges from this to this. And then I will include all these authors because I will have synthesized all that and put it together in one sentence, in one paragraph. I hope that makes sense. Instead of me writing that the prevalence of hypertension in low and middle income countries is 47.9. But remember that 47.9 only came from Malaysia. So now these are extra documents that we can actually attach when we are submitting for publication. And when someone looks at this literature review matrix, he will see how detailed it is, how you are able to get the literature review, and he can also trace back and look at all these documents very easily because you will have synthesized. Okay, you can see that there are quite very many that were synthesized and looking at only prevalence. So that is why it is important that every time we have to do literature and we want our work to be detailed and thorough, we develop a literature review matrix. It could be that you're talking about maybe utilization of maybe information science in Africa. You can also do that. Maybe you're looking at use of mixed method study in low and middle income countries in conducting information literacy studies. That is also there. I remember when we conducted a scoping review with Dr. Sarah, we did the same. And it really came out well as a chapter in a book. Dr. Sarah, do we have any questions about the literature review matrix?
There's something from someone who is asking, how fast can I read an article amid its timeline? And how do I select the correct ones among many?
Okay, thank you very much for that question, and it is very critical. Now, how fast can you do that? Now that, first of all, how we get literature or articles is we need to be very systematic. And how do we become systematic in how we use in how we search for literature? First of all, depending on which topic you're looking at, you will develop an aim of the study. Now, after you have developed your aim of the study, you develop your objectives of the study. Now, after you've developed your objectives of the study, you also have your search terms, which you will develop. Now, after you have developed your search terms, which now go into your search strategy, you will begin to search for your literature after you have identified the databases that you're going to use. For example, are you going to use PubMed? Are you going to use CUUL? Are you going to use maybe EBSCOhost? What are you going to use? Scopus? It all depends on your area of interest. Now, after you have developed your literature search strategy, you will go to the database, and then you will use your phrases or your search strategy to search for the literature. So after you have finished searching for the literature per database, you will send it to your maybe EndNote library or whatever you're using. Now, after you have sent it there, you will now begin to screen your articles. So for example, if you get maybe 100 articles from CUUL, you get 100 articles from PubMed, you get 100 articles from another database. Now, you also create another folder in your EndNote library and combine all the 300. And then you now start by removing the duplicates. After you have removed your duplicates, now you go on to now eliminate your articles by reading the abstract by title and abstract. Now, before you know it, the articles will be reducing because you're not reading the whole article, but you're reading only the abstract and the title. Now you eliminate them by using your abstract and title, and then they will reduce. After they have reduced, you now have maybe only 100 that you're going to include for full text reading. When you get those 100 for full text reading, you now go and get all the full text for the 100, and then you begin to read them. If they do not answer your research questions, you also continue to eliminate. And that is how we come up with the Prisma flow diagram. So by the time you're having the concrete included articles from the 300, you might end up with about maybe 50 for now, including in your study. So sometimes we do not read, even when we, after title and abstract, we continue to read this full text. But when you read the full text and you scan through and it is not answering your research question, you eliminate it based on maybe the methods that were used are not in line with what you're looking out for, or the title and abstract. Sometimes it happens that it is not communicating to the content that has been given. So sometimes you have to eliminate if it is not a good quality paper. And after you have done that, you only now include I think someone is talking in the background. Dr. Sarah? Dr. Sarah?
I'm trying to mute them. Mute them.
Okay. So after you have done that, so those 50 remaining articles are the ones you're going to. So briefly, that is what you would do when you're looking out for articles and how you come up to the final number of articles and the good articles that you include. It all comes from your research questions, your search strategy, and then of course, after you have screened your articles, you have scanned through them, and then you come up with the final articles that will be included. Now, for example, that literature review matrix that I showed you was for a scoping review that I did. And out of the 1,000, I think 685 articles that I found in literature, only 65 were included in my scoping review. So you can see that I didn't take everything.
Okay.
I hope that answers her question. Is there any other question before I proceed?
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Mary. We have something from Kasim. He's wondering where the literature review matrix is placed, but this was mentioned earlier on. He said that you put it in the appendices. And then I'm seeing something from Ignis Seranja. He's asking whether citations in citation, the end gives us a list of references. Is it different from literature review? This will take us forever. However, the functional committee is still planning more webinars, and EndNote referencing and literature review will be one of the sessions that we shall have. So this will be handled in our upcoming sessions. It can be handled now.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sarah. But at least EndNote helps us, and you also have to know the style that you're using when you're making your citations, so you set it as you write. And then sometimes it needs editing. Like Dr. Sarah is saying, they will take you through, they will even show you how to edit the EndNote library. Sometimes things go there and they are not as you expect, or something is missing and you have to add it. So thank you very much, Dr. Sarah, about that planning.
We also have,
Yes.
someone is asking, how do you treat authors? If you're citing 10 authors, I think he's referring to multiple citation, intake citation.
Yes. So if you're citing more than 10 authors, so I will give you an example of what we commonly use at Aga Khan University. Aga Khan University has adopted APS 7. So when it comes to APS 7, in the intake citation these days, we have migrated from APS 6 to APS 7. So when you're making an intake citation and you have 10 authors, you will only cite the first name of the authors, and then the rest will go in a table, and then you include the year of publication. And then when you have your when you have your reference list, it will include up to 20 authors. So their names will be listed on the reference list, but not in the intake citation. But now that is dependent on the referencing style that you have chosen to use or your university uses. So you need to check and see that you're doing the right thing. But in APS 7, that is what it is done today.
Okay. Thank
Yes.
you, Dr. Mary. For the interest of time, I'm seeing questions on referencing, citing, but like I mentioned, we are going to have sessions on these two, specifically Mendeley and EndNote. We shall plan and have them already there on our training schedule for this year. That's when we shall handle all these questions.
Okay,
Dr. Mary,
thank you.
you can continue with your presentation.
All right, thank you very much for that plan that you have ahead. So let's now look at, after we have gotten our articles, we have had our literature review matrix, do we just copy and paste what we put on our matrix? Because the literature review matrix, actually, you can choose to even copy and paste on it what you want from literature, because it is for your own guide. guidance as you write. But when it comes to now writing, you have to make sure that you paraphrase and summarize the material that you're getting from that literature review matrix. Like I said earlier, you're reading one article, it has a whole sentence about maybe prevalence of hypertension, or how often the library sources are used. And then it has been cited by many people. Many people have written about it. So you're not going to copy each and everyone's maybe paragraph or sentence and paste it in your work. We have to paraphrase or summarize in one way or another. Now, we need to when we are paraphrasing and summarizing, it is very important to think about this even before we go into any other thing. So we need to identify. Okay. So this is what I was talking about, that when you're paraphrasing or summarizing your material, after you have obtained all the literature that is still raw, actually I call it raw literature because you have not yet paraphrased, you have not yet summarized, so it is still raw. So after you have it on your literature review matrix, you can now begin to paraphrase or summarize in one way or another. So these are important things to think about as you begin to summarize and write, or paraphrase and write. So you need to identify the relevant points of the idea or argument that you're writing about, and this will depend on the purpose of your study. And also, when we are paraphrasing and summarizing, what paraphrasing simply means is you're getting someone's maybe sentence or paragraph, and you are trying to rewrite it in your own words, but maintaining the original meaning from the source where you're getting it from. And when we paraphrase anything from literature, we are supposed to acknowledge the source of that information by making an in-text citation. Now, when we are summarizing, the difference between paraphrasing and summarizing is very simple. Paraphrasing, we normally paraphrase short sentences or short paragraphs, but you can actually summarize even half a page. So normally paraphrasing, if you're paraphrasing, it is just maybe a sentence or a paragraph, but summarizing, you can even summarize a whole page or half a page, and you cite it that you have actually summarized that from literature. So it is normally a shortened version of the original. When we paraphrase, it will become shorter even. And also when we summarize, it will be a shorter version. And it should be in your own words. And it should show understanding of the original text. Please do not change the meaning of the original text when you paraphrase or summarize. And then you also, like I already said, you include the in-text citation and reference the original authors. And of course, when we do this, we are trying as much as possible to avoid plagiarism and also to reduce on the similarity index when we check for plagiarism. So, like I said earlier, like we have phrase bank, we also have another tool that assists us in summarizing and paraphrasing, and that is CUUL. I guess some of you have used it, and maybe for the interest of those who have not used it before, CUUL is can be able to, instead of you going into the detail of reading a sentence yourself, and then you have to find alternative words to mean the same manually, you can also do it using this CUUL tool. So it can summarize for you, it can also paraphrase for you. So for the interest of those who have not used it, allow me to show them this kind of tool so that they can also appreciate maybe and start using it. So I hope it is projecting well, the Word document.
Doctor, it's not projecting well. It is not clear.
Okay, let me increase on the font size of the document. Are you able to see it now?
Somehow,
Very
but
well. Maybe very well. Maybe it's his screen.
It is clear. I think it is green.
okay, we can go ahead. At least I can see something.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
sorry about that. But just to talk about Quillbot. Now, Quillbot is something that you can actually download, and you can sign up for it on the internet, and then you can also have it in your Word document added. So you can have an account for Quillbot, you can have your account for Grammarly, and it is added as a tool, as an ad on your ribbon. Like you can see my ribbon here. I have Quillbot, I have EndNote, I have Grammarly, I have Nitro Pro, where I can actually convert documents from maybe PDF to Word, Word to PDF, and so on. So Quillbot, how does it work? So you just click on Quillbot and make sure that when you are writing and you want to make any paraphrasing or any summarizing, to summarize anything, you have to make sure that you launch it and it opens in your Word document, besides your Word document. So I will launch it so that I have it as another window besides my original text. Let me just reduce on my original text so that you can be able to see everything that I am doing. I'm sorry, because of the interest of time, I'm not giving you time to practice, but I'll share the notes and you'll be able to try out and practice as well. And you can ask as many questions as you want if time allows, so that we have it. Now, what we need to know is that Quillbot will not work without internet. So you must make sure that as you use it, you have the internet. So if you want, for example, you have read a certain text from literature or from someone's findings section, and you want to pick that to put it in your work and then cite it, but you do not want to do it manually and you want to use Quillbot, you have already opened up your Quillbot besides your Word document. So what you do, you just select the sentence that you want to paraphrase, you select it, and the moment you select it, it will go to the Quillbot paraphrase window, like you can see. The findings show that only 9% of the empirical studies had adopted mixed methods research within the 10 years under review. So you may want to pick this and use it in your work as you write. So how do you do it? You just select what you want. It will come over here and then you click on paraphrase. I don't know why it is refusing to work, but you click on paraphrase. Sorry, it is refusing to work. I think maybe there is a network problem. Dr. Sarah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, so you just click on paraphrase. When you paraphrase, you read through what it has paraphrased in relation to the original text, because we have to keep in mind that we should not change the original meaning. So it will give you another text or another sentence that has the same meaning as the previous. However, you have to be careful that these tools sometimes can change the meaning. So you have to read the original, compare it with the new text that you've got, and then you can choose to take on that. But if you do not want to take on that, now this paraphrase manager has an option of rephrasing again. It can actually rephrase for you like 4 different times, so that you choose the best sentence that fits the original text. I hope it makes sense, though it has refused to do it. And then if you want, for example, to paraphrase the whole of this, assuming it was from the same source, you just select the whole of it. And sorry, you first of all, instead of remaining under paraphrase, you go to summarizer. So under summarizer, you will select whatever you want to summarize, maybe up to here, and it will, of course, bring it to the next, to the summarizer window, and then you click on summarize and it will summarize it for you. So you can see it has summarized this for us. This is the original text. You can see how big it is. And this is what has come out in the summarized text. So the moment you have this, you will now bring in your citation in parentheses. You can bring it in at the end and you cite the original source. So you can see how it makes life of an academic very simple. You can pick something from the internet, put it in your paraphrase or summarizer manager, and then it does the work for you. And then what you do, if you want to just insert this, so you will click on insert and it will replace whatever has been in the original text. So like if we can select this, you can see if I can have the word count, there are 62 words. Now in the new text that it has summarized, if I replace and I just click on insert, it has replaced, and I want to do a word count and see how many they are now. Now you can see there are 25 words only from 62 words. It has summarized it for me. So that is how good these tools are. So any questions as I go back to my PowerPoint presentation? And if there are no questions, I can proceed.
You can proceed, Dr. Mary. I have two questions, but I'll ask them at the end from the Q&A.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Okay.
we're running out of time. I'm going
All
to
right.
request you to summarize. I know there is just too much to cover. People are interested, people are happy, they're excited, but because of time, people have to go back to work. We're going to try.
All
and
right. Okay. Maybe I have already talked about some of the pitfalls that you have to be careful that you read the original text and ensure that it matches with the new text. Okay, this is what we've been saying, that you need to be very careful to ensure that you don't provide too much detail and you don't over summarize to lose the original meaning. So these are just simple steps. If you want to do it manually, they are just as we have been talking about. You read the original text, you have to put it aside, and you try to now begin to write your own. That is if you're not using the paraphraser, the paraphrase manager. So you have to read the original text, then you put it aside, don't look at it, and then try to make some notes from what you remember. And then you write your paraphrase, and then you can now compare with the original text to ensure that it has the original meaning. And if there are similar phrases and that have remained, or they are identical phrases in your new text, you can think of rephrasing them. And if there is no word that can actually replace, you can use double quotation marks and then looking at those words that have been repeated, and then you make a citation at the end. Now that takes us to quoting academic material. Sometimes it is inevitable that even as scholars, we quote some things that we find in literature and leave them as they are. So you copy paste something and then you put it in double quotation marks. So when do we use double quotation marks? We normally use them to introduce a word or a phrase that is ironic or a slang. So whenever we are using a word that is not in English, for example, you want to bring an actually word that you really feel you want everyone to know, then you must put it in double quotation marks, and then you define it before you continue to use it in your text. And then we also use these double quotation marks if we must write the title of the work in the text as we write, because it is not advisable that every time you write, according to an article that was titled this and this and this, they reported this and this. It is not necessary for us to write the titles of the articles that we've read in our text, because they will still appear on the reference list. But if you really feel that you want the readers to capture that title, and it is an interesting article, and maybe it has meaning to that very paragraph you're writing, then you have to put it in double quotation marks as you write. And then also, when we reproduce material as verbatim, as it was, you copy paste as it was, or someone told you something and you want to report it as it was, especially in qualitative findings, when we report those transcripts, then we have to put them in double quotation marks. However, what is very important about this, unless we are looking at qualitative research findings, when we are writing, we have to limit, or we have to use double quotation marks with caution, because it may increase your similarity index, and then it somehow becomes boring to the reader that you copied most of the things and pasted them as they were, and that is why you're quoting them. So you have to use it when it is a must for you to do so. So when do we use double quotation marks also? It is important to know that we can only quote up to only 40 words. And then beyond 40, we used a blocked quotation. I hope you understand what a blocked quotation is. If, for example, you're copying and pasting maybe
Show us
70
the difference
words.
of those quotations, please.
Okay. Okay, allow me to stop sharing, and then I will show you a Word document, and then we can okay. I hope I'm sharing the Word document.
Yes, you are.
Okay. And let me increase on this font size. Okay, so for example, if I come to this document I have read and I feel this part is very crucial for me to take it as is in my Word document, so I will copy and paste it as it is. And when I look at the word count for this text that I have copied, it is 25 words. So the computer shows you how many words you're copying and pasting. So when I copy it and take it to my text, so assuming I have copied and pasted it here, so when I talk about the double quotation marks, they are these ones that I will put here to show that it has been copied and pasted as it were in the original text. So after I have finished copying and pasting it there, then I have to insert my citation here, because I must show the source of the information. So my text, of course, will be in parentheses because it is coming at the end of my quote. I'm just giving you an example. This is not good flow of information, but like you said, you wanted to know how we make these different quotes. Does that make sense with this one? This is a double quotation if the words are less than 40. But let me give you an example. You may read something and then you feel you want to take it as it is, and it is more than 40 words. For example, if I copied maybe from here up to here, and then I go to my word count and I check there are 64 words here. When I check, there are 64. So they don't qualify to be in double quotation marks. So what happens is that, let me just put this one away so that you're able to see. So if I copy everything as it is, let's assume I haven't yet put this citation. We shall assume this is the citation that I used. So after you have counted and there are 62 words, they do not qualify to go into the double quotations that we've been talking about, but we have said you use the blocked quotation. Now, blocked quotation simply means that you will tab once and this paragraph will move away from the margin. So it will appear like this, and then the rest of the text will be starting from the margin. So this is a blocked quotation. So as a specialist reader, I will know that this is a blocked quotation. It has been copied and pasted as is the moment I see it indented away from the margin, because this is the margin now. The margin starts here, and then this one is starting actually 5 spaces away from the margin. This is a blocked quotation. And then maybe before I go back, now there are instances where you have read a text now like this one, for example, if, for example, you read this text and it is up to here, and when you read it from literature, it is already in double quotation marks. It is already in double quotation marks. So when you want to take the same sentence and also use it in your own document, remember that in the original text, it is in double quotation marks. The moment you take it and use it in your document, you will use single quotation marks. Now, for me, who is a specialist reader, I will know that this is a text that has been copied and pasted from an originally copied and pasted document. I hope that makes sense. So this is how it will look like. It will have it will have a single quotation. So the quotation mark will be like that, single. So you see, this is different from what it was before. So this simply means that this was copied from an originally copied and pasted sentence, and you're also copying and pasting it as it is, and you're also citing where you got it from. I hope I have answered that question.
Yes, you have.
Okay.
Dr. Mary, you have a question still around that. Someone
Yes, please.
that we do block quotations. Should I italicize or not? I have seen, especially in qualitative discussion, I think it means in the findings, italicized. Or what would be the difference? That is from Pius, one of your students.
Okay, thank you very much, Pius. What I would say about that, now that is dependent on the writing style that you are adopting. So if, for example, now let me first talk about general things. In most cases, when it is part of literature review, we just block it off and maintain the font style that we've been using, and we make a citation. But when it comes to the findings for the qualitative study, in most cases, they are italicized, depending on the writing style that you're also adopting. So that is really dependent on the writing style. And I think some of you writers can bear me witness if you have written qualitative findings, or if you have used Vancouver, if you have used APA, they will be different depending on their writing style. But in APA that we use in AKU, we in text for the literature review, we maintain the Times New Roman, or now it has been changed. There are other writing styles that we use, and then we block it off. So we do not italicize. And then when it comes to the findings section for the qualitative, when we report or when we present the transcripts, then some people choose to italicize, others do not italicize. So it will really depend on whether is it a modified APA, is it Vancouver? Yeah, that is how I would answer that question. So don't worry of whether the font style remains the same or you use italics. Look at the guidelines of your writing style.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Namuguzi. For the interest of time, I don't know how we are going to do it. I'm
Yes,
going to request you to summarize.
okay.
For the interest of time.
Okay, I'm going to summarize, Dr. Sarah. So you had also asked that you would be interested in looking at academic integrity. This is basically to ensure that we acknowledge whatever we have maybe picked from literature. So we must make sure we acknowledge the original authors. Maybe this one, the participants will read through, but I'm interested in taking them through the types of plagiarism so that they take note. Sometimes we do it intentionally and sometimes we do not do it intentionally. So there are different forms of plagiarism, and plagiarism is simply maybe academic dishonest, if I can call it. You're picking something from literature you haven't acknowledged and you want people to assume that it is your own. So that is what we try as much as possible to do away with as academicians, as writers. So we have what we call the direct or complete plagiarism. Now here, people go on maybe on the internet and they retrieve maybe an article and they just change their name to say Dr. Sarah Nakaziba is the one who conducted this study. And they put just their name, they leave everything as is. And this is the worst form of plagiarism, which we should never even try to think about. And then we also have another form, that is the mosaic plagiarism. Now, you pick several sources of, like the way I talked about the literature review matrix, and then you create a new piece of work that appears to be unique to you, and you do not cite it, and then you want people to assume that it is yours, and yet you picked it from different sources. Now, we also have another type of plagiarism which we should avoid as we write. Okay, and then we also have the paraphrase plagiarism. This is where someone chooses either not to paraphrase certain words, or when they paraphrase, they do not reference the original text as well, which is also wrong. And then we have also the accidental plagiarism. Now, this one is normally with the young researchers where they may be lacking knowledge of how to cite and then reference. This is very common among young researchers where they lack knowledge of citation, and then guidelines also are often lacking sometimes. And then lastly, inappropriate referencing. Sometimes you find someone has a reference list which does not communicate with the in-text citation, or someone has in-text citations and yet they are not on the reference list. So also that is not acceptable in academic writing, which we should also avoid as we write. Of course, there are other types like the self-plagiarism, where you choose to keep on, maybe you've conducted a previous study, you keep reusing your work to acknowledge yourself. That is also not right. And then, of course, verbatim that we've talked about. So there is also editing. I think Dr. Sarah will not allow me to go into the demo, but it is important that when we are looking at editing our work, we look at the content. Is it in line with our objectives? We look at the overall structure. Does it rhyme with what has been given to us in the guidelines, or we've missed out something, or we have interchanged the order? It is important to look at it as we edit. And of course, in Word document, there is grammar that we can use to help us, especially with the spelling, with the structure of the sentences and all that. That is now structure within paragraphs. And then clarity, when you read the sentence, does it make sense? And when you give it to someone else, does it bring out the meaning of what you want to mean? Or it is not? Sometimes what we think we have written is not what we write. from the face of other readers. And then you look at the style. They said APA, is your document in APA? So all that goes in editing. Do you have all the citations? Are they in the format that you're supposed to use? So you make sure that they are all correct. If they are not correct, you go to EndNote and edit accordingly. And as you edit the in-text citations, you look at the references as well to ensure that they are written correctly. And then proofreading. Now, proofreading is also very important as we do the editing. It goes hand in hand. So do not rely entirely on the spell checkers or on the spelling checkers. You also need to read. Some computers do not have certain words in their dictionary, or you can add it in the dictionary if it is not there, so that as you check your grammar, as you do proofreading, everything is well. And sometimes it is also important to give someone else to read, especially the English editors, or even someone who is very good at reading. When they read, they will always identify a fault or something missing, or maybe your punctuations are missing, so you can always correct accordingly. So there are important tools that can help in editing, but the show and hide icon is very important. If Dr. Sarah allows, maybe we can look at it, but if people know how to use it, it helps you to identify maybe where they are. There are sometimes we write and we are not sure whether it is one space in between words or there are 3 spaces. That can help you to identify.
Excuse me, Dr. Namuguzi.
Yes, please.
You can kindly show them the demo.
Okay.
Because I realize that most people don't know the show and hide icon.
Okay, I will do that. Let me just go through this slide and then we can do everything here on that. And then you can also use the find tool. You can split the page as you do your proofreading. You can use Grammarly as a tool. So since Dr. Sarah has been kind to give us some time, let me go to my Word document and then I show you what So members, I hope you can see this Word document that I have projected. So I just want to make one simple demo.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so assuming you're proofreading or you're editing your work, you will ensure that you have Grammarly on your ribbon for Word document. Like we said, you can have it just like we have Quillbot, so you can ensure that it is open. Besides as you write, you also have it open, so that, let me just reduce on the sides of this. Okay. So you make sure that your Grammarly is open as a tool to assist you to check on the grammar, spellings of words. Sometimes we write and then you realize you maybe missed out maybe a letter or a character as you are writing. So when you open your Grammarly, besides, now you realize here it is telling me correct your spelling here. So when I click here, it will highlight in my document that I did not include an S when I was writing the word studies. So I just click on it and it will correct it automatically in my Word document. And then it is also showing me that there is the word I. It is supposed to be in. When you read, as you're reading and editing and paraphrasing, you realize there is a mistake there, you also correct it. And then also here, there is a problem. So it will show it to you and you correct it. So that is now in Grammarly. So sometimes Grammarly will even suggest how you can write a sentence better. When you click on it, it will underline it either green or blue, and it will give you a suggestion. But that also depends on which kind of version of Grammarly that you have. Some of the Grammarly versions are upgraded and you pay for them some little money as academicians. So it will rewrite for you the sentence or make a suggestion of how you should write it better. Now, the other icon that I am talking about, the hide and show, when you're editing and proofreading, it is important to have it on because it will show you if there is any space that is missing or you have written the words and there is a lot of space between lines, it will show you. So this is the icon of show and hide. The moment you have that icon of show and hide, let me just increase on the font size and you have a look at it. So when you switch on that icon, this is what happens to your Word document. So you will have a dot between each word. I hope you're seeing it, the dot. Now that dot represents one space between words, which is supposed to be the case. So when we write words, they're not supposed to be attached, but they are supposed to be spaced with one space. So that one dot that you're seeing in between represents one space. But now when we come here, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots, meaning that I spaced 5 times, which is unacceptable. So what happens is when I find this as I read, I have to backspace and remove all the other extra spaces and then make sure that I have only one dot. Now you realize that there are 2 dots here, but one is below and one is in above. Now the one below is a full stop at the end of the previous sentence, and this one indicates that between this full stop and the next word is only one space. So that is the hide and show icon. And then when it comes here in between lines, sometimes we don't realize that we have left space in between, which is not supposed to be there. So this bar, this hide and icon bar that you're seeing, the moment you see that there are 2 spaces that are redundant in between your lines. So you just backspace as you edit and proofread and you remove that space. And sometimes when we write a document and we are trying to format it, let me show you something and then I can talk about it. So you realize that you have a big space between this paragraph and this one. And when you use this hide and show icon, it will show you that there is no space in between these paragraphs. So if with your university it is okay that you can leave this space for as long as you haven't added an extra space, let me show you the extra space that would come. If you enter once, it will show you one bar. Then it will show you that you have an extra space that you have left in your document, which is unnecessary. But if I backspace, you still see that there is space in between, but I did not enter anywhere. But the reason is that spacing before a paragraph and spacing after a paragraph is not equal. So if you want it to be equal, Dr. Sarah, are you seeing this icon here? I mean this.
Yes, we can see the dialog box. Yes, we can see.
Okay, this dialog box, thank you. So if you want them to be uniform, what you do, you just select the whole document and then you go to your home page, and then under paragraph, we have spacing before, spacing after, and you put it at 0 point. It should be able to uniformly space your document. You can see now it has gone away when you put it at 0. Okay. And then something else I had talked about was when I think the other tool is the split if, for example, you have so many pages and maybe you want to compare what is on maybe page 1 and page 30, you can split your pages so you go, it is under view, you split. So when you split, you're able to see other pages. Sometimes you want to look at the text and maybe compare it with the table, what is in the table. Instead of keeping on scrolling up, then down, you can just split your page and then you're able to see what is on that particular page you want to look at. Maybe it is a graph, it is a table, and then it's text. That is the split. As you do your editing, make use of that. And then the find, I think most of us use that. So when you want to remove it, you just click on remove split and it will go away. Then I want to remove the hide. You still click on it to remove it. And when you want to find anything, you just Control F to find what you want to find. For example, if I want to find all maybe mixed methods, I will just find it really wherever it is in the whole document. If you're editing a word, make sure that you find it and check through the whole document to see that the spelling is. For example, when you change one, you can either choose to replace or find and change it. Thank you, Dr. Sarah. I think that summarizes it. And then, okay, so that is what I've been talking about. You can make use of the show and hide, find, split page, grammary. I had already shown you. So in conclusion, as academics, as academicians, as writers, as students, it is very important that as we write, we are very good and knowledgeable about our topic. And how do we gain that knowledge is from literature. And then we must read the articles. And then we must outline and plan on how we want to write. That is the structure now. And then that is our literature review matrix. And then after you have all that, you can start your writing because it will be smooth. You have your literature review matrix. You can pick everything you want from there. And then before you submit anything to your lecturers, to the publishers, make sure that you review and edit, which is very, very important. Now, with those very many words, I beg to stop here and thank you so much. But if there are questions, I am happy to respond to them. Thank you very much. Dr. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary. This has been massive. I think you can see from the chat, I'm seeing, wow, people are sharing their email addresses. But members, I did share my email address. So whoever is interested, you can always drop me an email and then the slides will be shared. But also, like I mentioned earlier on, we shall share these slides and the recording with your librarians at your institution, who will be able to then share with you because we can't capture all the email addresses in the chat. However, because of the interest of time, we should only answer one question. I have an important announcement to make before we leave. One question and then we end. Let me look for that question. There are quite many, but we're just going to do only one. Someone is asking, why do supervisors ask whose authority is it? That is to say, in case you write your own statement in research, it's like a researcher cannot make a contribution. I got confused somehow. That is someone's question. So Dr. Mary,
thank you very much.
It briefly and then, yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. It also used to perturb me so much when I was doing my PhD, because when I would put in my input, my supervisor would say, acknowledge this information. So I tried to ask them, and this was their response. And I really appreciate why they were saying that. When we are writing as novice researchers, it is important to note that we are not experts. So our statements cannot be taken as gospel truth. That is why we should acknowledge what others have said in relation to what we've said. We might say it in our own words, but then we need to look at literature and acknowledge what they say, and then we can add a citation. So it is simply because we are not experts in that area, but there are some people, based on their biography, based on their experience, they are experts in an area. When they write something, they don't question. So that is what I can say about that. Thank you very much. So you need to acknowledge even what you input, because others have also said something about the same.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Namuguzi. Our ES has made a very good suggestion. In fact, you've made my life very easy, that we are going to upload the presentation on the CUUL website. So what we shall do, we are going to create a link to all our presentations that will be done in the webinars, and they'll all be uploaded there. Thank you so much, ES.
I think Dr. Sarah, someone has been raising up his hand, and I think he wants to say something. Maybe you could consider in a minute. I don't know.
The questions are very many. Maybe I'm going to request them to send them to me. I have another engagement which I should have joined like in the last 20 minutes. I'm very sorry, members, but you can send in all your questions. I'll forward them to Dr. Mary and be answered. Sorry about that. I know it has been so great. Thank you so much, Dr. Mary, for your time. Thank you so much for the effort that you have put in. I myself am sorry.
Dr. Sarah, before we go, do you want to take a picture of all of us if people can switch on their videos and...
Can I request someone to help me? Ludia, are you there? Can you help me take a photo?
Maybe people can switch on their cameras if they don't mind.
Videos. Before you start running away. This is very important. Another very
Dr. Sarah, can I please leave? Now that is...
yes, Dr. Mary. Once again, thank you so much for honoring our invitation. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. And thank you so much for allowing me to share your knowledge and skills. We are very, very grateful. We at CUUL, we are very grateful. And we hope that even when we get to invite you again, you do come, because it looks like there's just too much to cover. So when we do, please allow and come and share again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of the library team. And sometimes I make jokes with our librarians that I'm also part of your librarian team. And yes, if you invite me, I'll come. Hope people have benefited from this session.
We have.
Thank you very much.
I am sure they have
a blessed day.
and I'm sure that all those who had their manuscripts, shelved, they're going to remove them and dust them and write and submit for publication. I'm very sure. I'll be giving you that feedback. Remember, before you start,
thank you very much.
Please, I want to tell you about the upcoming conference. This is the 3rd annual Research Dissemination Conference, which will take place on the 10th and 11th of October 2024. It will be in Makerere, the venue that we were at last time, the CUUL teaching facility. And the theme for this year is transforming libraries and information services for sustainable development. We have shared emails about this, about the conference. We are sure that you have received them, but it is okay. We can still share. The themes are there. I'm not going to mention them, but the things are there. The sub-themes are there. And we sent out a COCO abstract. CUUL members, this is the time when we get to share our research. We get to share our experiences. So I would appreciate, and I'm sure that you take up this opportunity to come and share what you know, what you've learned, what you have researched about with the entire LIS community. So members, please write those abstracts and submit them. The deadline for the abstract submission is on the 20th May, and we have started receiving them. We have a team of reviewers who are eagerly waiting for your abstract. So members, please send them. And then another important deadline is on the full paper. So when you submit your abstract, the acceptance notification will be sent on the 10th of June, and then the deadline for the full. But like I was saying, we sent out a call for abstract, and saying that we already have a team of reviewers waiting for those abstracts to review them and also to guide you on how you can make them better. The deadline for the submission is on the 20th of May. So members, kindly take up this opportunity to disseminate your research to the wider LIS community in Uganda. Also remember that this conference is an international conference. So it will also host colleagues from other countries. So come and share with them. It would not make sense if colleagues from other countries outnumber us, members, LIS people. Colleagues, please write according to the things which are presented. Are you able to see? So saying that you can write along those things and you submit. The deadline for the full paper submission will be on the 5th of August, and then the notification will come in on the 2nd. Okay. Now we have also shared the guidelines for submission. I'm not going to go through them, but we are still going to share this with everyone again. And then for the fees, for the early bird, which I would hope that most of us will take advantage of, is 150, and it will end on 31st of August. Then the late registration is 200,000. Now we have had complaints of people complaining about the increment in the. There's someone who is the increment in the conference fees. But like I mentioned, this is an international conference, and yes, it is the third. We have been learning from the different conferences that we've had, the last two conferences that we've had, and we want to make it better and bigger. And also remember, like I said, we have international people who are coming. We want to make a name. We want to make an impression. So please support us in making a name for ourselves. And also remember, this is a time for CUUL to shine. We don't want CUUL to come out in a not so good way. So that's why you see that the money has been increased a bit, because we want to give you the best. We want to make it different. We want to make it better than what we had last time. And we shall also have the exhibitors. The payment options are still the same. But in case if you have any query or any question regarding payments, you can always reach out to our treasurer, Director Male. And anything to do with the conference, you can either reach out to me or to Mr. Boniface, the secretary. And then we have Nora, the CUUL admin. We are going to share this information. And also soon we shall plan a session so that we can answer your questions regarding the CUUL conference. But if you have one burning question, you can ask. Okay. If I don't have any questions, is there anyone from the third annual CUUL Research Dissemination Conference Committee who would like to add something?
Sarah, members should spread out the message to other people whom they think should be.
Yes. So please help us spread the message. Help us, market this event, because this is our event. When you say it is for CUUL, we are CUUL. Without us, CUUL cannot be. And this is the time when CUUL gets to shine, It is during some of these events when we get to shine. And remember, we are CUUL. So when CUUL shine, we also shine. Now, that is enough with the conference. I was also requested to talk about the AFIL has negotiated for us waivers for author processing charges, waivers and discounts. And this has been done in some of the journals. I'm going to share the link to the resources. So I'm going to request the librarians to get time and look at the resources and share the link with your researchers at the university, and also share the link with your faculty or with your lecturers remember, we all know how expensive it is to publish in an open access journal. So if you are given something like this, you take it with both hands. It has negotiated for us 100% in most of the journals, waiver, and then some are 50%. So seriously, we need to take on this opportunity. I'm going to share the link. Also, what you should note is that these lists are always, they are edited or they are revised twice in a year. So the librarians need to keep tabs on that. Yeah, so that you are in the know of what is happening. I'm going to share it now. Let me look for the link and share. I think
where have you shared the link?
Yeah, I have shared it. Members who are still sharing email addresses, I shared my email address. Please send your emails to the email addresses. I can't capture all the email addresses here. But also, like I mentioned, I'm going to share the recordings with your librarians. So don't worry, they will share. So members, that brings the end to my my announcement. And I would like to end by thanking you all for participating in this webinar. Especially, I want to thank the Research and Publication Functional Committee for planning this. I would like to thank the CUUL ExCom for the support. I would also want to thank the facilitator in her absence. I want to thank the publicity team. Thank you so much for marketing the event. I think you have all seen the numbers that we have taken long without seeing on in a webinar event. Thank you so much, Martha, for the good work done. We are really, really, really grateful. And members, like I mentioned earlier on, this is the first webinar that we are having in a series of webinars. We shall be having them every end of the year. So be ready to have one at the end of the end of the month. Sorry, we shall be having one every end of the month. So be ready. We shall have another one at the end of May. And this particular one will be on how can we publish from our research, from our thesis, or from our dissertation. That will be the next topic. So thank you so much from me and from my team. Have a blessed day.